The paper that we are looking at here is called Speaking to the Crowd, looking at past achievements in using crowdsourcing for speech and predicting future challenges by Gabriel and Maxine Eskenazi. This paper was presented at Interspeech 2011 in Firenze, Italy, and it was the lead paper in a special session on crowdsourcing for speech processing. So here it is. I'm drawing your attention to this because this special session included both an oral session and a poster session with papers on crowdsourcing for speech processing, and these papers could also be very interesting. But here we'll be looking at the overview paper, Speaking to the Crowd. Basically, this paper examines the literature on the use of crowdsourcing for speech-related tasks. It looks at speech acquisition, transcription, and annotation. Also, the assessment of technology that uses speech processing. There are two parts of the paper that I would like to focus on here. First of all, what they say about quality control during the design of microtasks. So the human intelligence tasks, which are the basis of crowdsourcing, and also what they have to say about the challenges for the future of crowdsourcing for speech. Okay, so basically, why would you want to read this paper? Well, if you want to know something about how crowdsourcing is used for speech technology, and also it gives information about the quality control, and also what they say about the future of crowdsourcing, I think applies to areas beyond speech too. Okay, so basically they define crowdsourcing as an act of providing a way for non-experts to complete a task that would normally be reserved for experts. This is more or less the standard definition of crowdsourcing, with one note, and that is some definitions do not require the crowdsourcers to be non-experts, but rather say that they're members of the general public, okay, so that we basically have an underspecified idea of what their expertise is. On the basis of that definition, they look at a series of papers which have used crowdsourcing for speech technology, and these then they group into three areas, and I'm going to go over each of these three areas briefly. The first area is speech acquisition. So basically they make the point that with crowdsourcing, the workers are in a remote location. You can't control the microphone, the distance between the mouth and the microphone, but crowdsourcing is an amazing new way of gathering speech. And the speech gathered, they say, is representative of the signal that a speech recognizer would process in a web or a phone application. So this is very useful speech for our speech technology training, these kinds of applications. The second area is speech labeling. And here they mention two areas of speech labeling. The first is transcription, so basically literally transcribing the words that were spoken in a given audio recording. And the second is annotation, listening to segments of speech and labeling them. They note that currently more literature is devoted to transcription than to annotation. Here are two interface examples, one from Mechanical Turk, and this one is gathering speech input. People are asked to say the words, and the second one is a transcription one based on Facebook. Okay, the third area that they cover is assessment of speech technology. This is very interesting. They point out that there have been papers that use crowdsourcing for the assessment of dialogue systems or to carry out speech synthesis preference tests, so to understand which version of a synthesized sentence is preferred by listeners. And they state that the pioneering studies in the area of assessment basically will lead to others, which will allow crowdsourcing to assess the value of any given type of system from the user's point of view. So basically, we'll know via crowdsourcing more about what users think about our speech system. Okay, and then they go on to analyze the literature a bit, but what I'd like to do is jump now to what they have to say about quality control. So quality control they define as involving a set of measures that is used to oversee and positively influence the quality of the data obtained. Now, they identify 3 different kinds of quality control, dependent on the different stage during the crowdsourcing process at which it is applied. First of all, it can be applied before crowdsourcing starts, pre-qualification, for example. Many times there will be a recruitment task which will be offered to workers and which will test the ability of the workers to carry out a specific task. If the task is successful, workers will be invited to do more tasks. A second kind of qualification is online filtering. Basically, it means during the task, the workers get feedback on how they're doing. And then finally, quality control can be carried out after the worker has submitted the work. Basically, this is the process of reviewing hits and then deciding whether or not to accept or reject them, which is very familiar from Amazon Mechanical Turk. They go on to point out that the 2 most popular quality control mechanisms for the post-processing type quality control, so review after the worker has submitted the work, are the interworker agreement and a gold standard. Basically, interworker agreement is a number of workers that agree on the assignment of a particular label. And a gold standard means that there are certain validation questions for which the answers are known ahead of time. And these are used to check to see if the worker is seriously engaging in the hit. They state that interworker agreement can be considered a sufficient measure, and it can be used to measure the quality of individual performance. Okay, so you don't necessarily need a gold standard. However, they warn that somehow and in some cases, the majority may not be right. You might have a minority voice in the crowd, somebody who is particularly good at a task, and this person will be drowned out if inter-annotator agreement is used as quality control mechanism. So they advise also using a gold standard. Another point they make is that online quality control is not very often used, so workers usually don't get any feedback when they're carrying out the hit. But that if you are able to implement this technically in your hit, it's very helpful because it shows the workers that quality matters during the hit and reminds them that they are being monitored. Or to express that differently, it tells the workers that you, as a requester, do care about what they're doing. You're very present with them as they do the work, and their output matters to you. So here's the reason why online quality control would be a good idea. And finally, they note that there's not really a significant improvement of quality that is influenced by different levels of award. Okay, so the more or less you pay people on the crowdsourcing platform is not going to influence the quality of your hits. However, they note that the payment does influence how fast your hit will run through on the crowdsourcing platform, how quickly you'll attract workers to carry it out. Okay, finally, they engage in some interesting discussion here about the future of crowdsourcing in the area of speech processing. They identify 2 major problems. One is the quality of the results. They note that a lot of papers do not do quality control, and that it is a good idea to really make sure that that is done before simply adopting the output of a crowdsourcing platform as your ground truth. They point out that it's important to see how cognitively complex a particular hit is. So if a hit is too challenging, workers will get frustrated and might not do well or might avoid it. We don't really have a good measure of what constitutes cognitive challenge. So they just say, let's try to examine the clarity and ease of the task and make it easier. Basically make it pleasant to do, make it a bit fun, and so that workers can really get into their zone when they're working and engage and give good quality results. Finally, and this is a very important point, they make the point that there is a growing gap in the speech research community, and that this gap can be blamed on crowdsourcing, and that is the gap between English and other languages. Okay, so Amazon Mechanical Turk is available to people that are based in the U.S., requesters that are based in the U.S., and beyond that, it is not possible to use Mechanical Turk, although you can use Crowdflower. This means that crowdsourcing, because of the popularity of Mechanical Turk, is very English-based. And also, it means the access to other languages is also restricted because the populations of those other languages are not necessarily in the U.S. Where Mechanical Turk is highly used. So they finish by saying it is highly desirable that groups of researchers from many countries will come together to create a means to crowdsource for all language. Okay, so that was my discussion of the Speaking to the Crowd paper, and we finish off this video by going to Mechanical Turk, and I'm going to walk you through two hits. One that doesn't work so well on transcription, you can see what the challenge there is, and the second one about annotation. Here we are on Amazon Mechanical Turk, and I'm going to attempt a hit that asks me to record some of my voice. Okay, so this is called Native Speakers of American English, make 10 recordings of yourself saying a short phrase. So we accept the hit, and we see what happens. Okay, they want us to have a working microphone. The phrase must be correct. Speak naturally and do the whole hit. Now, they first start out with some demographic information. So we give them that. What is your second language? Which region in the country did you grow up? Midwest, U.S. Your playback device is, select your recording device. Okay, we can't do either of those. So we scan devices. And then we try to, well, that doesn't work. So press record and say the phrase, say it naturally. Okay, let's see if we can do this. Hello, sleep number. Okay, so we have a technical problem with this particular hit, and unfortunately we're going to have to return it. Let's do one more.
No. Fifth and wood. Fifth and wood.
Okay, that sounds like he was shouting on the last one. Oh, sorry, entirely shouted. Oh, it says I didn't play.
Fifth and wood. Fifth and wood.
Okay, entirely shouted, but I'm only medium confidence because I don't know if he was just going faster or not. Here we are on Amazon Mechanical Turk, and I'm going to demonstrate a human intelligence task that deals with the annotation of spoken audio. This particular task is called Help Phones Understand When You Shout. Label speech as shouting or not. We're going to accept the hit and wait for connection. It tells us to be patient. Okay, here we are. We're connected. Shout or not. So it asks us to listen to 3 turns and then tell us if the last term is not shouted, partially shouted, or entirely shouted. Okay, previously I've carried out a training for this hit, so I should be able to do it relatively well. Let's listen.
Yes. Yes. Squirrel Hill.
Okay, so that's not shouted, and I was high in my confidence. Okay, let's try the next set. What these are 3 recordings of the caller side of a communication with a dialogue system. Let's try the second one.
New. Squirrel Hill. Yes.
Okay, so that was not shouted in my opinion.